As Spanish colonizers walked across the Peru Desert in the 1500s, they stumbled across some peculiar ruts in the ground. These dugout lines extended for kilometers in seemingly random directions.
The Nazca Lines. For more than a millennium, they have rested under the harsh, unrelenting desert sky. Etched into the heart of the Peruvian desert over 1,500 years in the past, the land is marked with enormous forms. Some take the shape of creatures. Others are vast, straight pathways extending for miles across the arid terrain. These creations are of such a grand scale that their complete form is only visible from above. For years, experts have examined them, striving to comprehend their creators and their purpose.
For over a century, archaeologists have marveled at Peru's ancient line drawings. Now, a breakthrough approach is rewriting what we thought we knew about these massive works of art.
Numerous theories were proposed, yet a definitive meaning remained just out of reach. Then in 2024, investigators applied sophisticated artificial intelligence to survey the desert from an entirely fresh perspective. What they found astonished even the most seasoned specialists, and it might finally unveil the reality behind one of the planet's most ancient and peculiar enigmas, Nazca, a story of desert, people, and land. For years, the enigmatic Nazca lines have confounded experts and the public alike. These immense geoglyphs, carved into the dry plains of southern Peru, spread across the terrain in forms that are only wholly clear from the air, suggesting intention and significance. Yet for a very long time, their beginnings were unknown. So, who were the individuals that made them? What kind of community possessed the ability, coordination, and motivation to imprint the earth with such colossal designs? The Nazca people thrived in southern Peru from approximately 100 BCE to 800 CE. They made their home in the arid coastal regions nestled between the Pacific Ocean and the Andes Mountains. This zone ranks among the most water-scarce on the planet, with certain areas experiencing almost no rain throughout the year. In spite of the severe environment, the Nazca established a stable and enduring civilization. By skillfully adapting to their surroundings, water was the foundation of their existence. Since rain was unpredictable, the Nazca constructed a network of subterranean channels known as puquios. These spiral-shaped openings tapped into underground water sources, enabling irrigation for farming. Their puquios are operational even now, a testament to their sophisticated engineering skills. With these water networks established, they could cultivate foods such as corn, beans, squash, peanuts, and cotton. They also domesticated animals, including llamas and guinea pigs. Nazca civilization was structured around modest villages, yet they maintained common cultural and spiritual practices. They left behind no written language, but their artistry communicates vividly. Their ceramics and fabrics display vibrant depictions of flora, fauna, gods, and people. These motifs imply that the Nazca adhered to a worldview centered on the natural world. Fruitfulness and harmony ceremonies probably were a major part of their everyday existence, particularly those related to rainfall and bountiful harvests. The heart of their cultural and religious activities was a ritual complex called Kawachi. This extensive site, situated close to the Nazca River, contains shrines, step platforms, and public squares. Experts think it served as a central location for celebrations, rites, and making offerings. Objects recovered from the area, like wind instruments, ritual pottery, and face coverings, indicate that Kawachi was deeply intertwined with their spiritual realm. In the vicinity of Kawachi, large geoglyphs started to emerge on the desert surface. While the full significance of these early forms is still discussed, their proximity to this key religious site implies they possessed cultural or sacred value. These were not haphazard sketches scattered randomly. They were part of a deliberate and purposeful statement by a society that used its severe environment as both a dwelling and a medium for expression. So how did they achieve the creation of such massive figures on the desert floor? And how have those figures survived undisturbed for over 1,000 years, drawing on the earth, methods, construction, and geometry? The Nazca lines were made with a degree of accuracy and forethought that still amazes archaeologists and engineers today. Despite having no modern technology or a view from above, the Nazca people devised a method that enabled them to outline hundreds of huge forms across the desert with remarkable precision. These geoglyphs were not the product of chance. They were meticulously planned, scaled, and implemented using straightforward but efficient instruments. The terrain in the Nazca area is composed of an upper layer of dark, iron oxide-coated rocks. Underneath that is a lighter, yellowish earth. The Nazca cleared the surface stones along narrow tracks to reveal the pale soil below. This difference in color between the dark and light layers made the shape stand out, particularly from an elevated view. The lines themselves differ in width, typically from 30 centimeters to almost 2 meters. Some travel in direct paths for many kilometers. Others create large geometric patterns, spirals, and stylized forms of animals, plants, and symbolic shapes. Famous instances include the hummingbird, the monkey, and the spider, each spanning over 100 meters. The size and balance of these figures show deliberate planning, not random creation. To produce such large and accurate designs without an overhead view, the Nazca depended on simple but sound surveying methods. Wooden posts, many of which have been discovered still fixed in the desert ground, were utilized to plot points along the design. Cords stretched between these stakes helped form straight lines and direct the creation of curves. By employing these tools, the Nazca could reproduce proportional figures across great distances. Researchers think the Nazca first drafted smaller models of the designs, perhaps on pottery or in sand, before scaling them up on the ground using grid or radial projection techniques. This method, comparable to modern scaling processes, let them keep correct proportions even at immense sizes. Archaeological tests have verified that with just stakes, ropes, and fundamental geometry, a small group could reproduce a geoglyph in only a few days. Significantly, the Nazca did not excavate deep ditches or build raised structures to observe the completed works. This has led academics to conclude that the figures were not intended to be seen from ground level. Instead, they may have served ceremonial, symbolic, or other non-visual functions. The lines themselves are not raised formations. They are negative images created by taking away material, not by piling it up. The exceptionally dry and calm conditions of the Nazca Desert were crucial in protecting the geoglyphs. With minimal environmental disruption, the exposed light-colored soil beneath the removed stones has stayed undisturbed for centuries. Unlike other ancient creations harmed by time and climate, the Nazca lines have persisted precisely because of the very land they were inscribed into. But despite their size and age, they stayed mostly unknown to the wider world until the 1900s, when they were at last rediscovered from the sky, igniting one of archaeology's most lasting puzzles, mapping the mystery, revelation, and initial ideas. In the 20th century, as aircraft started to fly over southern Peru, pilots and scholars witnessed something incredible. There were huge shapes, some reaching for hundreds of meters, carved directly into the barren desert. This revelation sparked one of the most persistent archaeological mysteries of the modern age. The first official research of the lines occurred in 1927, when Peruvian archaeologist Toribio Mejia Cespi noted unusual pathways weaving through the Nazca Desert during a standard survey. From the ground, he could not understand their true pattern or intent, but his account started to bring notice to the strange markings. The crucial moment arrived in 1939, when American researcher Paul Kosak flew over the desert while examining ancient water systems. Gazing down from the air, he recognized the lines formed huge geometric shapes and figures, unlike anything he had encountered before. It was Kosak who first characterized the Nazca lines as the world's biggest astronomy book, proposing they were connected to celestial occurrences. Kosak's work motivated a new wave of investigators, including German mathematician Maria Rieke, who became the most dedicated specialist on the Nazca lines. She spent years charting and analyzing the geoglyphs, frequently laboring alone under the desert sun. Rieke meticulously recorded over 70 major figures, including well-known shapes like the hummingbird, spider, monkey, and condor. She was convinced the lines held a deeper purpose linked to astronomy. Using basic tools like measuring rods and compasses, she contended that certain lines and shapes aligned with the location of the sun and stars during specific periods of the year. Based on this, she proposed the lines may have been utilized by the Nazca to monitor important seasonal events such as the solstices or equinoxes. She asserted they functioned like an enormous calendar or an instrument for observing the heavens. Over time, Aerial imaging exposed hundreds of geoglyphs dispersed across a 500 square kilometer region. These included not only animals and plants, but also long straight lines and trapezoidal shapes that cut across gorges and hillsides. As the count of recorded figures increased, so did the discussion about their function. Were they routes for ceremonial walks, indicators for subsurface water, communications to gods in the sky, or something else entirely? By the close of the 20th century, more than 400 geoglyphs had been recorded through conventional survey methods. Some scholars favored ritual explanations, noting the closeness of the lines to Kawachi, the Nazca's main ceremonial site. Others maintained they were agricultural calendars or markers for astronomical study. The early findings transformed the Nazca lines from forgotten desert markings into one of the world's biggest archaeological mysteries. With so many unresolved questions, focus shifted to new interpretations that concentrated less on the sky and more on the cultural and spiritual existence of the Nazca people. This change opened the path for a new wave of ideas about ritual and water veneration. Alternative perspectives: ritual, water, and fruitfulness. As more Nazca geoglyphs were found throughout the 20th century, the early emphasis on astronomy started to encounter new skepticism. While Maria Reich's theory of celestial alignment had seized public attention, archaeologists and anthropologists started to question if stars by themselves could account for the wide diversity of designs, sizes, and placements of the lines. The deeper investigators delved into Nazca culture, the more they detected a different trend, one that indicated not the cosmos, but the Earth itself. Specifically, attention turned to one essential force in Nazca life: water. Living in one of the most arid places on Earth, the Nazca people were entirely dependent on reaching underground water reserves. Their survival hinged on meticulously managing every drop through an intricate system of canals and puquios. These water networks were advanced, and they still work today, even after more than 1,000 years. As archaeologists studied the lines in relation to these water systems, a new idea came forward. The Nazca lines may have been part of ritual practices intended to respect or summon water. Some lines, researchers observed, ran straight towards sources of underground water or followed the path of ancient canals. Certain geoglyphs, like spirals and zigzagging lines, reflected the shapes of water channels and possibly symbolized its movement below the surface. Rather than being purely astronomical or decorative, these figures may have identified places where water was located, was required, or was honored through ceremony. In this reading, the lines served a spiritual role that was rooted in survival. The ritual theory gained more support from digs at Kawachi, the Nazca's ceremonial core. Located near many of the largest geoglyphs, Kawachi was not a standard city. It had no fixed population. Instead, it seems to have been a sacred meeting ground where people assembled for seasonal rites. Archaeologists found religious items, ceremonial pottery, and evidence of large communal meals. Some theorists believe that during major ceremonies, processions moved along specific lines or geometric paths, possibly as part of appeals for rain or to honor water gods. Other geoglyphs may have borne fertility symbolism. Animals like birds and monkeys, often linked with reproduction and natural cycles in Andean culture, were depicted in several of the most iconic figures. These symbols may have been more than ornamental. They could have symbolized requests to the deities for agricultural bounty or human well-being. In this view, the lines were not practical maps or scientific instruments, but symbolic landscapes meant to connect the human and the divine. The theory that the Nazca lines were associated with water and fertility rituals provided a more culturally grounded explanation. It linked the geoglyphs to everyday survival, belief systems, and to the natural world the Nazca relied upon. While this interpretation resolved some questions, it also brought new ones. If the lines mirrored spiritual and social life, how many more were out there? And what deeper narratives did they tell? That question would soon be answered not by people, but by machines. I enters the scene. A new era for archaeology. For decades, archaeologists examined the Nazca lines using ground surveys, aerial photos, and satellite images. While these traditional approaches revealed hundreds of geoglyphs, they were constrained by time, resources, and the immense scope of the Nazca Desert. Some figures remained too faint to see clearly from the air. Others were partly damaged or concealed by erosion, roads, or nearby human activity. By the early 2000s, it was evident that many geoglyphs had probably gone unnoticed simply because humans could not examine the vast desert landscape quickly enough. That shifted in 2022 when researchers started using artificial intelligence to see what human eyes could not. The pivotal moment came through a partnership between Yamagata University in Japan and IBM Research. The team merged high-resolution drone imagery with AI-powered pattern detection. These images were then input into a machine learning model, taught to identify specific patterns and shapes that match known geoglyph types. Unlike human researchers, the AI system could scan and examine the photos at high velocity. Within weeks, it processed a quantity of visual data that would have taken human archaeologists years to review by hand. It highlighted areas of interest based on geometry, contrast, and formation patterns. This initial filtering let researchers concentrate only on the most promising segments of desert, conserving huge amounts of time and effort. Once the AI had identified potential geoglyphs, the archaeologists on the ground assumed control. Between September 2022 and February 2023, the team carried out fieldwork to confirm what the AI had detected. This included physical inspections, measurements, and photographic recording. In total, they spent over 1,200 hours on foot, verifying the sites pinpointed by the algorithm. This step was vital for confirming the accuracy of the AI's findings and ensuring the new figures were indeed human-made geoglyphs, not natural features or modern disturbances. The collaboration between human skill and machine intelligence signaled a major change in how archaeological surveys could be performed. Instead of depending solely on what humans could physically see, researchers could now teach machines to detect subtle patterns, partial outlines, and worn features that might otherwise be overlooked. AI did not supplant archaeologists, it became their most potent instrument. In the process, the AI model started identifying not only previously missed geoglyphs, but also new kinds of formations that did not match any of the classic figures documented in earlier research. This breakthrough made news throughout the academic community. It raised new questions about what had been missed before and what deeper stories the desert might still be concealing. The answer to that arrived swiftly in the form of 303 newly identified figures. But these were unlike any seen before. 303 hidden forms. Everyday life comes to light. The 303 geoglyphs uncovered during the most recent fieldwork were a total surprise to archaeologists. Unlike the famous Nazca designs, long recognized for their clean symmetry and huge scale, these newly found figures were smaller, rougher, and completely different in nature. Many of them displayed human-like forms, standing shapes, crouching silhouettes, and what looked like people in motion. Some showed arms outstretched or heads angled, while others were organized in groups that implied gatherings or pairs. These geoglyphs were not uniform in design. Some were made of simple outlines created with a single continuous line, while others were more intricate with curved shapes and separated body parts. Many of the figures were asymmetrical, and some appeared unfinished, either because of erosion or because they were never completed. Several had heads that were oversized relative to their bodies, while others had only torsos or limbs. None of them looked like the refined animal designs already familiar in the area. Their size also distinguished them. While older geoglyphs often spanned hundreds of meters, many of these new figures measured only 5 to 20 meters across. Some were hardly visible without enhanced imaging, worn down over time and nearly erased by weather and the land. The location of these figures was equally startling. They were not clustered in one place, but scattered across multiple valleys, including areas already researched and others on the outer fringes of the known Nazca territory. A small number of the geoglyphs included non-human elements. A few were geometric with overlapping shapes or abstract outlines that didn't fit established categories. Others were so faint or broken that only parts were recognizable, such as a head without a body or a single foot-shaped mark. Their irregularity and diversity raised immediate questions. The figures did not match any standard known classification. They weren't copies of previous designs. They introduced new visual components into the archaeological record. ones that had never appeared in earlier Nazca surveys. What these 303 geoglyphs revealed was not just a different style, but something far more unanticipated. With these discoveries, scholars were now compelled to reevaluate the purpose of the lines completely. The next question was how to interpret their true meaning in light of this new evidence. Reconstructing purpose. From ritual to daily reality. For years, the leading explanations for the Nazca lines centered on religion, astronomy, and sacred ceremony. Most academics thought the geoglyphs were either gifts to deities, astronomical markers, or ritual pathways connected to seasonal or spiritual events. But recent discoveries prompted a shift in viewpoint, leading archaeologists to reconsider the function of the Nazca lines as a whole. Instead of viewing the desert as a religious platform for only priest-led rituals, scholars started investigating the idea that the Nazca lines reflected a wider spectrum of societal activities. These included demarcating territory, directing movement across the land, and expressing communal identity. The positioning of lines across valleys and their intersection with known settlements raised the possibility that many of them served practical or symbolic roles that were not strictly ceremonial. Researchers also noted that many geometric lines, especially long straight paths and trapezoids, show evidence of having been traversed repeatedly. This bolsters the theory that some lines were used as roads or pathways during social gatherings, trade, or even regional meetings. In this perspective, the geoglyphs were not just observed from above, but interacted with directly by those who lived there. The increasing complexity of Nazca society during its peak also added weight to this shift in thinking. As the culture expanded across valleys, it became more probable that different communities used the desert to express themselves in their own unique ways. This challenges the notion of a single centralized ritual purpose, and instead suggests multiple overlapping meanings behind the geoglyphs, some sacred, others social, and possibly even political. What emerged from this fresh analysis was a more human-centered interpretation of the Nazca landscape. The lines were not only about deities or celestial bodies, they were part of a living cultural system created by people to reflect their lives, beliefs, movements, and identities. The desert was not just a sacred space, it was a shared space inscribed with forms that modern scholars were only starting to decipher. As this reinterpretation gained traction within academic circles, the public response was just beginning to form. What followed was not just a change in theory, but a global reckoning with what the Nazca lines truly represented. The stunning disclosure, why the world is astonished. The Nazca lines were researched for nearly 100 years under one core assumption, that they were created for gods, stars, or spiritual ceremonies. These interpretations influenced textbooks, museum displays, documentaries, and decades of archaeological study. But the newest discoveries shattered that foundation. The real astonishment was not just the figures themselves. It was the understanding that we were mistaken all this time. Scholars had been viewing the entire Nazca phenomenon through a restricted and potentially inaccurate lens. What the new findings revealed was a fundamental error in how ancient cultures are often studied. By concentrating on a few iconic symbols and constructing whole theories around them. For years, researchers highlighted the massive, symmetrical animal designs and assigned them spiritual meaning, presuming a uniform purpose across the desert. The newly uncovered figures, many of them crude, irregular, and spread out, didn't fit that template at all. And that was the issue. These figures didn't just enlarge the inventory. They invalidated the notion that the Nazca lines were part of a single, coherent religious system. If some geoglyphs reflected personal, social, or practical use, then the entire framework that guided prior interpretation fell apart. This compelled institutions, educators, and archaeologists to acknowledge that the Nazca lines may have always been more diverse, more fragmented, and more human than previously thought. For decades, the academic narrative focused on elegance, symmetry, and presumed meaning. But in doing so, it screened out the possibility that some lines were spontaneous, local, or even experimental. The newly discovered figures revealed the consequences of that bias. Scholars had ignored vast sections of the landscape and possibly the culture because they were seeking meaning in the wrong places and applying the wrong criteria. For the first time, the Nazca lines are no longer being regarded as sacred messages from the past. They are being treated as evidence of a past we never fully saw because we never thought to look differently. That's why the world is in shock, not just because of what was uncovered, but because of how long it remained concealed in plain sight. What do you think about the Nazca lines? Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.